Good evening and welcome to the October 25th meeting of the Princeton Public Schools Board of Education. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Andrea Spalla.
Here.
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Betsy Baglio.
Here.
Molly Crine.
Here.
Justin Doran.
Here.
Tom Hagedorn.
Here.
Daphne Kendall.
Here.
Fern Spruill. Absent. Connie Witter.
Here.
Evelyn Spahn.
Here.
Abby Emerson.
Here.
And Brian Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion for the adoption of the minutes from the meeting of September 27th? Justin? Second. Connie, thank you. Any discussion? None? Hearing none. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, I do not have a board president's report tonight, but I would just like to point out that in lieu of my report, the board will be voting on agenda item E1, which is the approval of the payment of the merit goal bonus achieved by the superintendent for the school year 2015-2016. Just for the public's edification, the merit goals are set in September, voted on publicly by the board. The superintendent is then reviewed the following September. The board determines and votes publicly as to what degree he's met those goals. This vote tonight is simply a technical approval of the payment for goals we've already determined he's met publicly from last meeting. So may I have a motion for agenda item E1? Molly? Justin, second. Thank you. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Spalla. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, those of you who are here tonight. It's easy for superintendents and for school boards to get caught up in buildings and budgets and policies and problems. So it's important for us to reaffirm that everything we do is ultimately for students, and it's important to spend time celebrating all that they accomplish and the many ways that learning occurs in this district. So I just want to give a quick rundown of a few of the activities that have recently have taken place in our schools or will take place shortly. Last Monday and Tuesday, all of our sixth graders participated in outdoor education and team building experiences on site at the Stony Brook watershed. On Wednesday, the entire middle school celebrated Unity Day. Author Maui Asgadam spoke to students of his journey as a boy from a refugee camp in Sudan to the United States, to Harvard University, and beyond. Ilsa Loeb, a Holocaust survivor, spoke to another group of students about the saving power of human kindness. Middle school students practiced their own acts of kindness by taking the food they had been bringing in all month for the Mercer Street Friends Food Bank and working together in small groups to construct actual food pyramids. They stacked cans and boxes in seemingly precarious but stable formations. Tomorrow, our eighth graders leave for their annual 3-day trip to Washington, D.C. In addition to touring all of the traditional museums and monuments, they will also be reflecting on what monuments may be missing. They will be considering if there are groups of Americans who are less represented in the city that serves as the center of political power for our country. I just want to say how much I appreciate the work of our teachers to help students operate at the highest levels of thinking by evaluating our representation of history rather than simply accepting it. And speaking of Washington, D.C., our students throughout the district, most particularly at the middle school and high school, have been talking with their teachers and among themselves about the presidential election. Their conversations have been thoughtful and respectful. They have focused on the issues. They have examined the role of the media, and they have reflected on what they believe to be the qualities of a great leader. I also believe that our secondary students participated in mock election. I have the results from the high school. Do you guys have those? I think it was 900 to 200.
Yeah, Hillary won
Yes,
by a lot.
Yeah. So turning to the arts, last weekend our PHS choir beautifully performed a series of operettas by Francisco Barbieri. They sang the operas in both English and in Spanish. This weekend, the PHS orchestra will be performing La Petite Prince, The Little Prince, on our newly refurbished post-flood stage in the high school Performing Arts Center. And next weekend, November 4th and 5th, our middle school will be performing Charlotte's Web, which is their fall play. And in the arena of athletics, we had a wonderful homecoming on October 14th with a pep rally in the afternoon at the high school and more than 1,000 in attendance at the football game under the lights. We also had an outstanding fall sports season. Our girls tennis team won the Mercer County tournament. Our girls volleyball team, which is one of our newer sports teams, won first place in their league. Our boys soccer has advanced to the Mercer County tournament finals and I believe is playing Thursday night at TCNJ. Girls soccer made it to the semifinals. Field hockey made it to the quarterfinals. And our boys cross-country team, which is continuing to take in honors, is now ranked 20th in the nation. Wow. The deadline for Option 2 applications is this Friday, October 28th. We currently have 70 students approved and are likely to have another 70 or so who will qualify and use their participation in a sport outside of the school day to fulfill their PE requirement. And finally, a word about nutrition, food, and fun. All of our elementary schools participate in Garden State on Your Plate, which is a program in which locally sourced vegetables are prepared in savory and creative ways and then taste tested by our elementary school kids. This month, all of our elementary schools had a taste experience with broccoli. I believe Littlebrook may have that experience this coming Thursday. Visiting chefs from Princeton University worked with our own chefs to prepare broccoli in tasty ways such as cream of broccoli soup. Students also learned fun facts about broccoli. For example, did you know that broccoli has as much calcium per ounce as milk? I did not know that. I would ordinarily conclude my report at this point, but there is a particular item on the agenda that I want to just spend a moment on and deserves special attention. After 8 years of serving Princeton High School and a lifetime of serving students, Lori Rotz has let the board know that she will be retiring at the end of this school year. Lori is one of the wisest, kindest, most student-centered people I know. She is a model of integrity and quiet strength, and in her gentle, understated way, she has transformed the lives not only of students, but of staff, of colleagues, and of this superintendent. She listens, she loves, and she speaks the truth in ways that people can hear. Lori began her career as a teacher of health and PE. She later served as a director of guidance before coming to PHS as a vice principal. Lori will leave a legacy of kindness and compassion in the Princeton Public Schools. I am truly grateful I have one more year to work with her, and I will savor every interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. May I have a motion for item G1, the HiB reports? Justin, second. Connie, thank you. These reports were reviewed and discussed in closed session because they involve confidential student information. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Board committee reports. Abby and Brian.
Hi, everyone. Over the last month, we've been making progress on the positive mental health survey that we discussed at the last board meeting. And we will continue to meet with administrators and various personnel until we develop a final product, which we hope to release and then provide the data back to the board within the next month. And then this month, we asked students about meaningful homework assignments to get an idea of the homework that students want to be assigned and that they feel is most beneficial to their learning.
So on the topic of meaningful homework, we found most students spend an average of 3.8 hours on weekdays and an average of 5.1 hours on weekends. And over 60% of students reported that greater than 2 hours of this homework was busy work. So students also believe that a reasonable amount of homework would be 1.7 hours a night.
And when we questioned them, students identified busy work as work that did not lead to a greater understanding of the topic, was repetitive, tedious, on irrelevant material, or homework that required copying definitions out of textbooks. They felt that this was not productive to their learning. Students identified meaningful homework as something that helped a student's understanding of the material, strengthening skills through practice, and homework involving analytical and creative thinking.
So 50% of students found homework they were assigned to only sometimes be meaningful, which shows a large gap between what students want to and need to be assigned and what they are actually assigned. So because of this gap, Brian and I are suggesting a program that helps students evaluate the homework teachers assign them, so teachers are able to reevaluate what was actually helpful for their students and what was too repetitive and didn't help their students learn. We also provided a list of classes, which is actually not in the packet. We should share that with you guys later, and asked students to identify, in their opinions, which classes had the greatest amount of busy work. So the classes that students picked out as the highest percentage of busy work were English 1, English 2, AP World, US 1, US 2, Spanish courses, and French courses. But because of the diversity across departments of where students felt as though there was too much busy work, we believe this homework evaluation program should be placed in all departments.
And then we asked students to give us some examples of what they considered meaningful homework. And to start off, I'm actually going to reference some of the wonderful work that Dr. Carell has been doing. His students said that the practice problems for AP Chemistry have been extremely helpful to them because they're assigned different problems that each cover a different topic, and then they have the option to do additional practice problems, but it's not obligatory. So if they understand the concept, they don't need to keep doing the same problems, and they also have a chance to review their homework when they get back to class, and that's been extremely helpful for them. Something else students found was important is using things that connect your learning to your daily lives. An example that they stated was watching the presidential debate to prepare for their GovPol classes, and they felt that having that kind of a connection of what they learn in class to the real-world applications within their own lives was something that strengthened their passion for the topic and helped them delve deeper into the subject, and that was extremely meaningful for them. Further examples include, especially with the math department, we got a overwhelmingly high number of students who reported that their math homework has been meaningful and productive to their education, particularly because they have additional practice on everything, and they also do have the chance to go over in class. So what we've kind of been seeing is students are looking for homework that draws a connection to their lives, and also homework that they get a chance to review, and not something that's just graded by a teacher simply for completion and then just chucked away without being reviewed.
Okay. So further, we also surveyed this month regarding the effectiveness of the guidance and psychology departments, and we received lots of feedback regarding the mental health survey we planned on using this month from several board members, guidance members, and other PHS faculty members. They felt as though that the survey in parts would be the best way to collect meaningful data without upsetting students on a topic that is so close to their hearts and all too close to their lives.
So in terms of guidance and psychology evaluations, that was the first topic that we surveyed because we wanted an understanding of how many students are taking advantage of the resources that we offer at PHS. And we found that approximately 34% of surveyed students never met with their guidance counselors or only met with them very, very occasionally, and we found that to be a concerning number.
So of the students who said they did meet with their guidance counselors, about half said they were comfortable speaking with their guidance counselors on most topics, but not all.
And then we asked students what they felt the role of a guidance counselor was at PHS, and we got very positive feedback on this. A lot of students said that guidance counselors are trusted adults that help them feel comfortable and safe at school, that make school as stress-free as possible. Guidance counselors are people who help them with their time management, family issues, and scheduling problems, who are supposed to reach out to students and make an effort to connect with them. And one thing that I found particularly funny was one student said that the role of a guidance counselor is to help the student fit in and guide them through the horror of high school.
Okay, so while we're not sure why students would feel uncomfortable speaking about certain subjects to their guidance counselors, we plan on meeting with Mrs. Ciso and other members of guidance to discuss the results and come up with ideas and solutions regarding the discomfort experienced by a majority of students.
And then we also asked students what they felt could be improved about the system that we have at PHS. And those students had a generally positive view on what guidance counselors are supposed to do. A lot of them complained about the amount of workload that each of their guidance counselors has to maintain. And as a result of that, they described this as often the interaction starts at the college process or when a problem develops. And they felt that that was too late for the relationship to start. So we feel that there needs to be an earlier connection between guidance counselors and students, particularly at the freshman level, where they can reach out and not feel pressured by the time they reach senior year to develop that connection. Furthermore, there were some issues in the guidance department this year simply because of scheduling. some students had to switch guidance counselors, and as a result, they felt some stress associated with who was writing their letter of recommendations. And furthermore, there were counselors that were on maternity or paternity leaves, which ended up conflicting for students because they couldn't meet with them regularly to discuss scheduling. One student actually complimented Ms. Shah very highly as she stepped in to help him with his schedule when he was unable to meet with other counselors, and she got it done very quickly and efficiently. So definitely a good job going on there. And then a lot of the kids just observed that the pressure on kids at PHS is immense, and overall stress and competition at the school, simply because of the nature of our district, does end up being higher than some other districts, and students feel that guidance counselors should be there to fill that role and support students when they need that kind of backup, especially in an environment where they are competing against other definitely talented students.
So next, when students were asked about the psychology department, only 4% of students knew the correct number of psychologists the school has. It's 4. And only 5.3% of surveyed students had ever gone to see a school psychologist, while 21% had been to a psychologist outside of school. And we think the reason for this is that there isn't enough knowledge of the mental health resources that we have at the school for students.
So we also took a moment to ask students what they felt the role of a psychologist within the district was. And a lot of them responded that they either were unsure or that it was simply an extension of guidance. So it would be the same role as a guidance counselor. And we felt that although there were some students who accurately described how a psychologist can support you with various other issues, including family issues, drug abuse, anything along those lines, unfortunately, the majority of students are unaware of what the psychology department actually does, and they simply feel that it's the same thing as a guidance counselor, and that would be something that we want to address to make sure that every student is aware of the role that psychologists can play in their lives and that they should not feel uncomfortable talking to them.
So Brian and I are suggesting that the new website the district is working on clearly lists resources so students and parents can easily find information regarding our psychology department. And I actually tried to find information this morning on the psychology department, and I couldn't find where it was or the availability of the psychologist, so I think that really needs to be addressed soon.
And we're also looking to extend our surveying data to the middle school through the peer-to-peer program. But as a result of the DC trip and their scheduling issues there right now, this is going to be pushed off a little bit until they fix into a set schedule, and then we will continue making sure that their voices are also extended to the board.
So the entire middle school or just 8th grade?
Well,
We're hoping that the 8th graders can help us develop surveys that would be better for a middle school level, because at the high school level it's not exactly the same as the middle school level. So we're hoping the peer-to-peer kids will help us develop these surveys and then give them to the entire school.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. So
Again, I'll just comment, I think that what you guys are doing are fantastic, is fantastic. I do know as of last count, I think we had just shy of 1,600 students at the high school. I think it was 1,588 if I remember correctly. And I noticed that your responses are 152 responses. I would really love to see you guys encourage your student peers to fill this information out. These are the kind of responses, and this is the kind of data that's going to affect change.
definitely for our next survey, which is on a much heavier topic, we're going to go to all the homerooms and make sure that we try to get every student possible. Yeah.
Just a question, Abby. When you were talking about the homework, a couple questions actually, but when you were talking about the homework data, I think you did it in a different format that's in this handout. What did you say the average hours on a weekday were for a high school student?
On a weekday, it was 3.8, and on a weekend, it was 5.
3.8, so it's almost 4 hours
Yes.
of homework per night.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's average. And then 5+ on weekends. To me, that just seems overwhelming.
Especially with the busy extracurricular lives, athletic lives of our students. Yeah, that does feel like a lot.
And then just to clarify, because I'm not sure everyone in the room heard, so are you suggesting that homework come with some sort of feedback sheet on it? Or how are you suggesting this feedback part of the, how much is busy work? And could you just describe that in what you were thinking there?
That's something we would want to work with teachers to figure out what would be feasible for them. I mean, given that a lot of students felt that the math department was doing an excellent job, we would assume that maybe the subject of math would be something that we can jump over at this point, but definitely with these subjects relating to language where students feel that there is an excessive amount of busy work, we want to talk with the teachers there and figure out what a good way that they think feedback
But
should
your
come.
suggestion would be to somehow collect feedback coming the other way from students about how
Yes.
long things take, whether they thought it was meaningful. Actually, just how long it takes would be very interesting data, right?
Yeah.
Because I know with my own kids, you know, the teachers would say, oh, this only takes 20 minutes, and my kids would spend an hour on it, and
Yeah.
they'd say, well, okay, well, that's just your kid, right? So they don't have any way to know what everybody, and we don't, I as a parent don't have any way to know whether it's just really is my child who's different than everyone else. So it would be interesting to get that kind of data so everyone has a better sense. But that's really interesting information and to Justin's point, it might even be worth redoing that survey again
Yeah.
to see if we can get closer to 1,500 students to really know. Because if it's 4 hours a night, I mean, frankly, I don't think that that's the intent of the high school, to give, you know, children 4 hours of work a night
I
after a
hope
full
not.
day of work at school.
Yeah.
So, and then just another question on the psychology piece. And maybe I should know this, but does every student have a chance to get like FaceTime with a student psychologist? So my question is, if I were, you know, if I wanted to see a psychologist, I didn't have an IEP, I didn't have another reason where I had an introduction to a psychologist, is there a FaceTime moment where I know somebody, like when I'm a freshman, and so that if I'm just want to come in and talk, that person's already known to me, and I can say, hey, I'm just dropping in? Or is it really I have to go find that psychologist and walk in there and introduce myself? Do you know how it works?
You're not introduced to a psychologist. I mean, I think your guidance counselor would probably be able to suggest it to you.
Right. Okay.
But I know you have to meet with your guidance counselor in 8th grade to make your schedule, but you'll never meet with a psychologist
Right.
until you actively seek one out.
So it's not surprising, you know, the level of
No.
awareness that kids have in your survey, given that they've never really been introduced face to face
Yeah.
to a psychologist. So that's interesting.
I mean,
too.
even just with trying to find the room number of the psychologist,
Right.
we struggled to find what hallway it was
Yeah.
located.
Yeah.
and,
Good. Well, thank you. That's really interesting data. And I do think, you know, the homework one, you saw it's on the agenda tonight for Mr. Cochran's goals for the year. Last year, sorry, but it's still, you know, something that we're focusing on. But so redoing that survey and getting like a really broad data set, even if it's under somehow the umbrella of the school rather than you guys trying to do this independently, is something that I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do that.
I'd like to
Thank you.
second that and everything else that's been said about what a wonderful survey, so thank you for your hard work. I want to follow up on the busy work topic, particularly since if you're going to redo the survey. I do know the whole idea of differentiated instruction. Some things that some students will think are busy work are really necessary for other students to really learn the material, and it may be the case that the teachers are doing this intentionally. So I think if you're going to redo the survey, which I think would be very useful, it'd be very good to get some demographic data of the students who are filling that out and linking it. So I don't know what survey mechanism you use, but we are able to disaggregate data from surveys we do. So you could see at what level 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade are doing that, what types of classes the students are doing, what their, say, GPA. It's just some data so you can get a sense of who's actually feeling that way. Because it might be, you might find different types of students feel different ways towards it, and I think that needs to be taken into account.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
But it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful piece of work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, everybody is clearly very enthusiastic about this data, what it might mean, and what more data we can get. You guys are not here for us to give you assignments. I just want to make that very clear. But I think that what you're seeing here is the enthusiasm of the board for more information directly from the students. And so that means you guys are doing your job very well. Glad there are so many of your classmates here to see how well represented they are.
Well, you're only doing 4 hours of homework a night, so you have extra time after that to get on some of this stuff. Yeah.
Is that the end of your report?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to say, usually I know you guys like to stay through the end. I have a feeling the meeting might go a little late. I also know this time of year is really tough for seniors. Got some deadlines or something like that coming up. So if you need to leave, that would be totally fine,
Great.
at any point either.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't
you.
feel bad about scooting out the back. Okay? Thank you very much. Facilities Committee, Molly's going to give the report in lieu of Fern.
Yes, facilities met yesterday. It was a very short meeting. We first heard from Peter Thompson about the district's network capabilities and issues coming up with that are going to be reviewed and will be updated, I believe, at our next meeting for possible board action. Then we also set a schedule to look at architect engineering firms. We were given a list that's going to be reviewed, and then we're meeting earlier next month at 9 instead of 11 to schedule interviews for the committee to look at those firms. And that meeting is November 14th. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Finance, who wants to do it? Pat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Finance Committee met last night, Monday, October 24th at 6 p.m., and the purpose of the meeting was mainly to go over the annual report for the year ended June 30th. We met with our auditing firm, Wiss & Company, and we have a lot of other things to cover tonight, but I just will say with respect to finance, it was a clean audit. There were no issues. There were absolutely, with respect to two very immaterial issues, no comments of any kind. They said it was one of the first audits they were able to get done just because there was such cooperation between the business office and the auditing firm. And just a testament to Stephanie Kennedy, our business manager, for the 19th year in a row, the International Association of School Business Officers have given Princeton Public School District an award for a clean audit, and Stephanie an award. So another great job from our business office. So thank you, Stephanie, for all your hard work. We also started to go over some an analysis of athletic expenses. Just Finance Committee has made it a priority this year to delve into how resources are allocated within the athletics department, and so we started looking at that. There'll be something coming up on that on prior meetings. The next Finance Committee meeting is at the same time as our next school board, which is November 15th, 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Personnel, Molly.
The Personnel Committee met last week. It was a slightly longer meeting than yesterday's facilities meeting. The committee had a presentation from Brenda Sewell, who's the coordinator of communications and website management, and she gave us a presentation on the draft of the district's 5-year communications plan. She focused her presentation on several areas, including improving internal and external communications, redesign of the district's website, so suggestions coming from our student reps will be considered, outreach to all families and district constituents, and having more people becoming involved in the way the district communicates to all stakeholders. The committee made suggestions to incorporate into the first draft of this 5-year plan, and she will look to gather more input and prioritize the goals for each of the years in the plan to present a final version for the full board to review. The committee also reviewed the substitute teacher handbook and made some suggestions. We looked at the human resource newsletter, which is on the website. And the committee was apprised that representatives from the administration and the PREA will be gathering in the late fall to begin work on evaluating all non-athletic EPES, or extra pay for extra services, stipends. The stipends include advisorships to clubs and before and after school duties performed by staff for students. The EPS committee will be meeting throughout the year with the goal of examining the compensation and, where necessary, revising these non-athletic stipends. The committee then reviewed a report on faculty attendance for the 2015-16 school year. The overall faculty attendance rate in the district for 15-16 was 97.9%. We then ran over the annual report, which is currently also on the website, and some suggestions were made for next year's report. The committee then reviewed the number of worker compensation cases and lost days by employees due to injuries over the last 5 years. The committee noted that the number of cases dropped from 71 in 2011-12 to 31 in 15-16, and the number of employees missing work due to injury dropped from 22 employees to 10 employees over that period. Enhanced safety methods, training, and collaboration were cited as key reasons for this decrease. We reviewed the list of leaves of absence and discussed several confidential matters. I also just wanted to address the retirement of Lori Rotz at the end of this year. I've worked with her and known her, and her warmth, wisdom, and kindness has benefited our students, staff, and community, and myself personally, and she will certainly be missed after this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Student achievement, Pat?
The Student Achievement Committee met twice in the last month. The first meeting was on October 14th, and we covered a few things, and I'm going to go, again, try to hit the high points and not everything that we did. But Lauren Smith, who is our intervention coach, presented an overview of her work with respect to our program towards accelerated intervention for children, especially in younger grades, to get in front of any issues that they're having. So that was really an update from her. There was also an update from Cindy Brenzinger about the School to Work program, which has been a very successful program that we're continuing to support and build out. There was a important presentation that I think we'd like to have sometime at a full board meeting with respect to social and emotional learning by Sarah Leda and Kristen Michelson. And it really is about not only teaching social skills and teamwork in classrooms, but also we spent a lot of time talking about executive function, coaching teachers on how to address executive function skills, especially in the elementary and middle schools. And so this is a really important area with respect to differentiated learning, which is part of our strategic plan. And it would be something that the community as a whole would be really interested in hearing about their work. Joanne Krause, our mathematics supervisor, also presented an interesting plan that, again, we'll probably talk more about, implementing a math assessment at the elementary level. And we also talked about potential changes to the middle school course, particularly the concern that the Student Achievement Committee had that getting into an accelerated math track at middle school sort of changes your trajectory, in sixth grade, changes your trajectory more or less for a long time into high school, and there should be ways to get back in interchange between those two tracks. We think that's important. It would take a lot of pressure off of these poor middle school kids who are, all trying to get in accelerated because they think it's going to change their life, and it shouldn't be that way. Everybody develops at a different pace. We then met again on October 21st and talked about a few things. One was about the schedule of standardized tests that we do as a district, particularly some discussion about why PHS sophomores take the PSAT when the test is really designed for juniors and seniors. We'll probably come back to that at another meeting. We've been looking at the community service program at the high school, and I think we've gotten feedback from student representatives with respect to that over the years as well. We're talking about making improvements to that program, and it appears those changes won't happen as quickly as the Student Achievement Committee would like, but it will be part of our overall learning initiative, and we'll be revisiting that in the future. We also talked about the dual language immersion program at Community Park. Just get an update on that program, which has been hugely successful. There's a wonderful video maybe on the Community Park website that shows these little kids speaking in fluent Spanish. Is absolutely amazing, giving their science presentations in fluent Spanish. It's just tremendous what that program has achieved. And so the question of whether to continue the program at all is probably not in doubt, but it's something that we'll be discussing in meetings ahead. But also the question about how to expand that program and how to make it accessible to all of the children of our district, if they so desire, is something that's on our minds. The committee adjourned at 12:15, and the next meeting is on November 18th here in this building at 12:30 p.m.
Thank you. Policy. I'm sorry, Daphne, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Policy. Tom.
I think she was just handing me the microphone. Thank
Okay.
you. The Policy Committee met on October 13th, 2016 at 8:45 in the morning. We approved the second reading of Policy 5330-01 on medical marijuana, which is on tonight's agenda. Policy 2431.1 5.4 on concussions was also initially scheduled for second reading tonight, but that has been postponed to a later meeting. The committee discussed a number of policies that are not having a reading tonight, but hopefully before the year is out, we will see them. Policy 5516 on electronic communication and recording devices, a policy on high school graduation, and a policy on civility. The committee also discussed and approved 3 policies for a first reading tonight. The first 2 policies, 3283 and 4283, are on electronic communications between school employees and students. And they represent a significant revision of the initial reading in July and are having a second first reading tonight. So it's not a second reading, it's a revision of the original first reading. I should say, previously at the August meeting, I believe it was, I said that after we revised the policy, we were going to have additional input from staff on the changes, and it was going to be at night. We haven't discussed the time for that. I figured I was going to talk to Steve after this meeting, and maybe we'd set up a time in the next day or two where at least a couple members of the committee maybe should be able to meet with staff early next week before our next policy committee meeting to get that input. The last policy, 0164, conduct of board meetings, revises the current format of board meetings by adding an additional non-restricted public comment period earlier in the meeting. This is motivated by the recent communications audit, and the goal of the revision is to facilitate additional input from the community at board meetings, particularly community members with young children who may not be able to stay until the end of the meeting. The policy committee meets next at 8:45 a.m. on Thursday, November 3rd, and is open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. We come now to the first of our 2 public forums. This public forum is for members of the public to come to the microphone, state your name and your affiliation with the district. If you're a parent, you can just say you're a parent. Please keep your remarks to within 5 minutes. This first public forum is for any comments regarding matters on the agenda, items J through M. So if you're here to talk about a personnel matter, this is your time to do it. So I welcome any members of the public now to come to the microphone.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Tom.
Tom Divac, 20-plus year resident of Princeton. 4 kids, 2 have already gone through the system. They're in college, 2 now are in high school. I represent a big group of people here pertaining to Princeton high school girls athletics globally, Clarence White on a micro level. But just let me start with a few overall comments. The last 5 or 6 years have been some very disturbing trends pertaining to how grievances, parent-driven grievances, are dealt with in the athletic department. There have been a number, I'm aware of about 5 situations, there may be more. Parent approaches the athletic director, the principal, the board with a grievance, real or imagined. They have a right to do that. And the next thing you know, coach is terminated. Coach's contract next year comes up, they're gone. Good example, the girls lacrosse program, correct me if I'm wrong, this year will be the 4th consecutive new coach. Obviously, folks, that's not good. There's a problem. There's no continuity. There's no transparency. There's no parent involvement. There doesn't even seem to be any due process. Very, very disturbing. This has also touched the girls' basketball program recently. Same situation. Parent approaches, and I'm not sure what order, but athletic director, principal, human resources, board with a grievance. And there very well might be merit to some of these grievances. Next thing you know, coach is gone. No transparency, no due process, no parent involvement, secrecy. Very, very disturbing. That's the macro comment. The micro comment pertains to Clarence White. I think most of you people know Clarence White. Clarence has been a fixture in this community for 20-plus years. He runs the PBC, Princeton Basketball Club. The man is an outstanding man on every level. He's been a mentor and a coach to 20-plus years of kids in this community. The man puts in an amazing amount of time. His compensation is probably measured in the cents per hour in terms of what he does for what he gets. Last year was the first year where he was an actual coach on the Princeton High School girls basketball. He was the assistant coach. Did a great job. This year, he was offered a contract, I believe, to be the head coach. And then a couple days later, he's terminated. Now, ostensibly, the issue at hand was there's a rule, the NJSIAA evidently has a rule that says from September 1st to the start of the high school basketball season, you cannot coach high school girls, and I'm sure this applies to the boys also, in an outside league. We went and talked to Clarence. His understanding was, per Dan Van Heist last year, who was the head coach, who told Clarence it was acceptable to do that. We had a meeting yesterday with Brian Desbinski, who I believe is he the acting or is he the athletic director? He's acting. I think he was shocked to see a room filled with about this many people yesterday. And he even really didn't know the rule. So what we did today is at least 3 people within this community called the NJSIAA. I called, Rob called, and Clarence called, and perhaps other people. And amazingly, we got different stories, different interpretations of this rule. One guy said it's a violation, death penalty. Death penalty being defined as you cannot coach for 365 days, I believe. Somebody else, Clarence, was told that the school board has discretion on a penalty, and it can be something as simple as a warning, or it could be termination. And then I think you spoke, Rob.
I'll cover that.
Yeah. So it's very, very disturbing. If you look at all these things that I just talked about, what these girls have gone through, and I can only, to be fair, I can only speak about girls lacrosse and girls basketball, because my girl plays lacrosse and basketball. Here they have this man who they love. They adore this man. Next thing you know, he's gone. Just like that. He's just gone. For that matter, Dan Van Heist was a coach last year. He's terminated. He's gone. Ostensibly because of one grievance put forth by a parent. Again, no parent involvement, no transparency. It doesn't sit well. It's just not good. The whole perception is very, very poor. But coming back full circle to Clarence's situation, speaking on behalf of this group, at the very least, we would like you guys to whatever decision you were going to make tonight about basketball coaches should be postponed and allow a little bit more due diligence to be done to have this issue fully vetted, fully explored in greater detail. Because if it stands the way it is now, we have lost an amazing man. These girls have lost a mentor, a phenomenal coach, a just gem of a guy. And the negativity that will infuse the community is just, it's sad, is what it is. It's very, very sad. So collectively, our hope tonight is that you guys take a look at this issue in more detail, get more facts. I mean, just the fact of what happened calling this NJSIAA today. It blows me away that you can get exactly opposite opinions on what seemingly is a rule that I never knew of. I don't know how many people here knew about that rule. So there's disappointment, there's anger, there's frustration, and we want this issue to be looked upon much more closer and come to a resolution that is in the best interests of these kids. Not me, not the other parents, but these kids, these girls, who have a wonderful team spirit, wonderful camaraderie, and they want Clarence to be their coach.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay? Yes.
Tom, can I just ask? Tom, I'm talking to you. So I'm sorry. Usually, board members don't respond to individual public comment, but I just had a question. You said that one of the people who called NJSIA today, got a conflicting piece of information from what you got. Do you know whether that person was told what the consequences to the girls' team would be if the board were to allow a coach who had broken an NJSIAA rule to continue to coach? You don't know? Okay,
Well, some of the conflict had to do with just that question.
I see.
So, I'm sorry, was Mr. White, just from what Tom said, was Mr. White an assistant basketball coach, or was he going to be the head coach?
He was the sorry, can I respond? He was the JV coach, and he was offered the head coach job. That's,
So-
right? But he was offered,
the assistant coach, JV/assistant last year.
yeah,
And I'm not sure what he was going to do this year. I know.
we didn't know until,
He signed a supplemental employment notice offer to be the assistant coach on September 6th, and then he was promoted, and then, I guess a few days ago, and then suspended for the year by Divac. He actually, during the time that he was coaching the high school girls, was not an employee of the school district. He signed an agreement to become employed as of November 15th. I think he was misinformed about the problem and the conflict that existed. May I?
yeah, sure.
People can hear me? Clarence is an AAU coach, and for those of you who know about basketball, AAU coaches are very, very important in high school basketball. This is how Clarence makes his living. He's a wonderful coach, a wonderful guy. He was making his living and had contractual obligations before, while his career or his temporary employment with Princeton High School was still up in the air. Now, the girls' program was sort of an afterthought. The boys' coach was hired and was taken care of. Clarence still had no idea what was going to happen. So he entered into contractual obligations to coach a fall league with high school girls. And that's the problem he's in right now. Let me point out to you, the last two coaches that I'm aware of, and I did speak to the state organization as well, and I got the information that the school board here could decide upon a penalty, and that they're generally happy to let this stay within the district. So Billy Lovett at East Orange was suspended for 6 games for violations that were much more extreme and egregious than anything that Clarence committed. Kevin Boyle missed 3 games at St. Patrick. He was a pretty famous coach. So I just don't understand. Now, the girls coaches who were suspended apparently don't make the Star Ledger. But these 2 guys got 3 and 6 games respectively.
Do you know
And I don't understand why Clarence is gone for a year.
Do you know what those infractions were?
They were basically the same thing, spending time with your athletes during that period when you're not supposed to, which is September 1st to the beginning of the winter sports season. And they were, I'm sure, very well aware of that rule. Clarence has only coached as a temporary employee for 1 year, and I think he was relying upon the advice that was given to him by his supervisors, Van Heis and Dubensky. He didn't research this himself. By the way, I looked at the state regulations. I can't find the death penalty there anywhere, not specifically. Those regulations are very, very nebulous, and I certainly was not told by the representative with whom I spoke. Unfortunately, I didn't write her name down. I was a little bit hurried. I did most of my research today. It's the first I'd heard about this. But, I mean, I think given the, let's say, the rather casual way in which the girls' program has been treated, we could really do something to amend that by standing up and supporting this guy who has been giving of his time and energy tirelessly and with virtually no meaningful compensation for about 25 years. The guy loves the game, he loves his girls, and he's the sort of pedagogue that should be supported. And if it takes a little, if there's some static or if somebody has to experience some exposure, this is the thing that's worth exposing yourself for.
Hi.
Sorry, just one second. Can you just, for the board's minutes, sir, can you just tell us what your name is?
I'm Rob Wolfoak. I'm a parent.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Inez Arroyo. I'm a senior at Princeton High School, and Clarence has been my coach since freshman year. And first, I think the most important thing that Clarence has given me is he made basketball my anchor, and by like the past few weeks, everything that's happened, I feel like that's kind of been taken away from me. So I just like to start off by saying that. So met Clarence my freshman year, and since then he's basically been a dad to me. My dad's works in Boston and he commutes, so he's not really around that much. So Clarence really stepped in, and I love him for that. And he's not just a basketball coach, but he's my favorite person. And I had notes, but they got deleted. Clarence, he's just a part of all of our lives, and this is just like the effect that he has on all of us. I met him 4 years ago, and I didn't even know how to dribble a ball. And now, like, around school, there's rumors that I'm, like, getting recruited, which is true. He's even part of my college experience on the Wake Forest app. I don't know if anyone knows. It's give your top 10 list, and I did top 10 things Clarence White says. So he's just everywhere. He's all around, and he just does so much for us. Not even basketball-wise, just he changed us. I just can't believe everything that's happened, because if you get to know him as a person, you'll get to see that he doesn't deserve this at all. And I think, Mr. Cochran, you were talking about Miss Rods, which I love Miss Rods. I can't believe she's retiring. And you said she listens, loves, and speaks truthfully. And I think that's what Clarence does, truthfully, even if you don't want to hear it. Obviously, we know. But I think he really does that. And I'm really upset to see him like this.
Can I ask you a question? How many girls are on the varsity basketball team?
There are usually 12 girls. Yeah, 12. But he coached the JV, so and was an assistant head coach. So he probably 30 girls in the program.
30 girls, 25?
25? Yeah,
And-
and just to add that Clarence he's the JV coach, and he's assistant coach for the varsity, but he's also the head person in Princeton who organizes basketball. So without him, September 1st, after September 1st, it gets cold. We can't play at CP, and we need a teacher with us to play at the high school or any other gym. So we need him to play. All we want to do is play basketball, and he can do that for us.
Are all the girls here current players?
Yeah. And there's some boys, parents, everyone.
No, I just want to know. Is this the team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for
So,
coming out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just
Yeah.
want to say, so, hold on, Kit Kat, hold on.
Yeah.
See, I've known her since she was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
So I think that enough information has been raised tonight for the board to have enough question about what's on the agenda to need more time. And the superintendent agrees. So I think that what we will do is table Mr. White, the decision on Mr. White's resignation until our next board meeting. I do want to address Mr. Divic's point about transparency and due process, because it's really important. It could very well be that we do due diligence, and when I say we, I mean the district, I don't mean the board. I mean Mr. Cochran, Mr. Zabinski, and all the people who administer the schools and the programs. They will do due diligence. They will investigate this, get all the facts, pursue all the different conflicting facts that you all have presented tonight. And at the end of that process, in good faith and for good reasons, they might reach the same conclusion and recommendation to this board. They might not. Oh, wait, hold on. The transparency piece, this is important. The problem that you all see is that decisions get made based on facts that aren't presented in public, and that's true. Unfortunately, the board and every school board in New Jersey is bound by certain laws that protect the confidentiality of all personnel matters. And Tom, I know you know this. The due process rights of our employees, including coaches, are paramount. We cannot discuss the facts of investigations. We can't discuss reasons. If someone comes to our board meeting and says, I heard you did this, and I heard this was that, and there was a parent who said, we can't confirm or deny. We're not allowed to talk about it. That's to protect the confidentiality of our staff. And I know it's frustrating, and it seems like we're being opaque. And in that one instance, we are. You're right. It's very frustrating. But I just need everybody to understand that sometimes decisions get made and voted on in public, but they get made for reasons that cannot be made public. So I get it. It's frustrating. But I think that for tonight, it's clear, just based on the few comments we've heard, that there's at least enough question among the board members that we're not ready to make this decision tonight. So we'll table it till next month.
And if I can just build on what you were saying, I first want to thank all of you who came out to speak for Mr. White. It shows the compassion you have for him, your the value you place on positive relationships and good coaching. We, as a board and certainly as an administration, want the best for all of our student athletes and for girls basketball in particular. So we're listening to that. I do want you to know that we did some due diligence here. We contacted our attorney and had them look at the rather lengthy and, as you pointed out, Tom, not always easy to decipher regulations from NJSIAA. Our attorney came to the conclusion that you did, I guess, when you made your call, which was that the law was clear and the penalty was pretty straightforward, and that our violation as an institution of that regulation could lead to penalties for the school district. It could lead to forfeiting of games and championships for the team. So just to echo what Mrs. Spalla had said, like, we will, if there's someone else that you spoke to who has a different take on the interpretation of the law.
Larry White is the senior guy who I did try to reach. He was unavailable for me to talk to, so I spoke to the next guy, Jack Divac.
Okay.
If the death penalty's in their regulations, I can't find it. Maybe I need to look harder, but it is a very turgid document. with
Understood.
room, and apparently it's been violated in practice because those guys should have gotten the death penalty and they didn't. They got 3 and 6 game suspensions. And I think that's because their school board took the initiative to say, okay, this was a violation, we recognize it, we're reporting it, we've punished this guy, we've decided locally what the punishment should be, how about it? And the state didn't really want to go to battle with them, and that merely might be how it would work. It might take a little bit of courage on your part to protect this guy.
Well, I think
We understand that you all can make the decision of whether he gets a slap on the hand or whether we lose or forfeit a few games. You could decide that, and then the NJSIAA can agree with you.
Okay.
So why does he have to be terminated?
We'll find that out.
We'll find
We're going to
out.
find that out.
Yeah, we just so you know that the information we received was different.
And I don't want to insult any lawyers, but, I think lawyers always prefer to give you the, no harm alternative. I'm sure that's the easiest thing to do is just to say to Clarence, go away for a year, and if he accepts that, then you have no liability. But that's the easy way,
Okay.
maybe not the right way.
Is there anybody else who has any, go ahead.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
Did your legal counsel pursue a waiver or ask about a waiver? Because that's sort of, one, a legal solution to a legal problem would be to pursue a waiver.
Yes, and was told that that was not an option.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who have anything to say about agenda items? Well, you certainly can talk about anything on the agenda, but since we're tabling, since I've said that we're tabling the item that you all came here to talk about, you're welcome to. Hi, Patty.
Hi. Patty Manhart, U.S. history teacher at the high school and girls head volleyball coach. Not talking about Clarence, but I do want to say that I so appreciate the positive advocacy of parents and the girls for coaches. Andrea, I completely understand what you said about confidentiality, but I can't help but see what happens to my fellow colleagues and really know them as amazing people and not have that negatively impact my psyche, my well-being, and then what I do as a coach. So that's just something I wanted to express. And again, Mr. Divac, so great to hear from you, so thank you. Different personnel requests and some good news to share, so we'll start with the positive. This weekend, the girls volleyball team went to the second ever West Jersey Interscholastic Volleyball League Championship. We came in as the 5th seed and we came out as the #1 place. So we won the championship for our league.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah. Woo. This is only our 4th year as a program. When we first started as a team, we agreed to being fully funded by our players. We are completely out of pocket for the first 2 years. So coach's salary, buses, referees, equipment, any of that sort of miscellaneous finances, it all came out of the players' pocket, first 2 years. Next year, my salary was picked up, but there was still the pay-to-play aspect. And this past year, we finally brought on a JV coach. So we've had a JV program for 2 years. I split my attention just kind of JV varsity and how he practiced and how he played. But having a JV coach this year has been so important in the varsity program then being able to advance and grow and develop. Coach Burge is being paid out of pocket from our players, so that's a financial burden that gets put on our 31 members of the team. And I just want to share this. I understand that what's happening for this athletic season has already been decided, that cost is coming out of our pockets, but to please just consider for next season to fund a JV coach whose salary is comparable to other varsity programs. It helps legitimize what we do when my girls know that we are getting the same amount of funding as other programs that have existed longer than us when we are doing just as well.
Right.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Patty. How fabulous is Patty Manhart?
Does anybody want? Yeah.
No, I know that. Yeah.
Elizabeth Divac, parent. I just wanted to ask, I think it's great that you're going to reconsider it, and we're excited. We just want to know, the next board meeting is so close to the start of the basketball season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking, is there any way they could, because the person's going to want to get started with the girls.
Well, this is a concern
I
we
know.
have. I mean, we have on the agenda tonight also the appointment of other girls' basketball coaches. So
I know. So I didn't know how that would be handled.
Well, we have to
Can they
table
have, can they
all
have
of
another
it.
meeting sooner than the next board meeting?
You mean the board? No.
A special session, no. So this will have to wait to get appointed till the next. What happens if you find out in the next week that, from your lawyers and your investigation, that there's no way that Clarence, then you'll still wait to appoint those people till the next meeting? You'll have to?
We would have to.
Well, we could appoint them subject to board approval and they could start working, right? As long as the board
That's
was
true.
informed.
Yeah. So,
What is that?
so yes, the superintendent could, in those exigent circumstances, appoint them to begin work, and then they'd be subject to board approval at the meeting on the 15th.
Oh, okay.
The 13th.
The 13th? Oh,
When is the next board meeting?
it's the 15th. I think it is the 15th. Yeah.
November
It's the
15th.
second
Yeah.
Tuesday in November.
Right. Okay. That was just a question.
Yeah, no, but so
question.
there
Yeah,
is a
thank you.
process.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
for this kind of emergency situation. For
Okay.
when we need to appoint somebody and they need to
And
start
what
working.
happens if they decide that Clarence could be appointed before that next board meeting? Could you do the same thing?
Yes.
You could. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
So in short, Liz, the fact that our board isn't meeting until November, whatever, 15th, is not preventing a new coach from starting once the decision has been made, like who that coach needs to be. Okay. Dr. Corral.
Bob Corral, I teach science at the high school. I stand up tonight to talk about the first reading of the electronic communication policy for staff and students. First of all, want to extend my thanks to the board and to the board committee for inviting us and allowing us to have input on the revised draft. I can see from the revised draft that you seriously took our concerns to heart. This draft is a much better draft than the original draft, in my opinion. I think it addresses a lot of the concerns that teachers and coaches had, and I think it, by and large, is a very good policy. My concern is something that happened last week, and I think part of it is generational. I think many of us who are our age are still living in the 20th century, and that we all still think of email as a primary means of communication. It is to the point now when I send my students information by email, I first send them a message on our Facebook group to tell them to check their email. So I know that if I send them a message on an email and I don't tell them otherwise, that there's a chance that 3 or 4 days of critical information may go by that they don't get the information. So here is a situation that occurred just this past week, and I'm not sure I could handle it this way under the new policy. I had a student who was out for Thursday and Friday of last week as we were wrapping up a unit and starting some review. And in an AP course, 2 days is a lifetime. Okay, we cover a lot of material in 2 days. So I wanted to send material home for her over the weekend. She was out Thursday and Friday. So I sent her a Facebook message to tell her that I arranged to have stuff given to her brother. Because if I sent her email, I'm not sure her brother was going to remember to give it to her, and I'm not sure she would have gotten the message had I sent it to her another way. So my question is, do I read the policy right that if I get permission from the parents and my supervisor at the beginning of the course to use this manner of communication, that this is acceptable, even though I would not be using a school email system to send this message?
Go ahead.
My reading of the policy is yes, that
Okay.
if you get the permission of whoever it is your supervisor or principal is or designee, yes. The goal is that I think the language of policy was crafted was the electronic learning management system that the district is in the process of getting would have messaging capabilities at some point, and then once it had those messaging capabilities, we would want all staff to be using that, just with any other capabilities as well. So email is very well developed now, so that's
Right.
pretty much assumed, and that's sort of the plan going forward. But right now, as far as I understand it, Betsy, I'd have to defer to you, but I don't think it has those messaging capabilities right now.
I mean, I don't believe that it's been rolled out to the entire district there are people using it and learning about it, but it isn't something we can expect people to use at this time.
But the big wild card is, are the children going to use it? So, and we're aware of that as a policy committee, that a communication tool is only as good as it's being implemented. And so our goal as a policy committee is to protect the communication between staff and students, not limit it, protect the teachers, protect the students, and we're just trying to weave our way through the legal requirements. But I have to thank you and your fellow teachers for spending some part of your summer with us to discuss this. And it's very much appreciated, and as you see, it makes a difference. So thank you, and we'll take, I think there isn't the last sentence that, we do not mean for this to be a punitive policy.
The world of communications changes day by day, if not minute by minute. I mean, yes, I've made it into the world of Facebook. I have not made it into Snapchat and Vine and whatever else, okay? And I may never make it into any of those. But if that's the way to communicate with my students, I may be forced to. And that's just, the policy is going to need to evolve.
Correct.
As time goes by.
And we'll continue to look at it. Bob, if I can just ask a clarifying question for those of people in the audience and those who may be listening at home. When you're talking about communicating to students through Facebook, you've set up a group Facebook page for your class. You're not talking about your personal
Correct.
Facebook or communicating.
I have a private group set up that I am the administrator of. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Administrator? You see how much I know. Where at the beginning of the summer, when the students get their summer assignment, one of the first things I tell them is get one of your friends, because I am not friends with you.
Correct.
Who is currently in the course, to add you to the Facebook group. And then this way, I do all sorts of things. You know, Brian can tell you. I send out, just got the word, 90-minute delay tomorrow, so you can sleep in. You know, things like that.
I can call you first then.
Often, yes.
I just want to second as well what Daphne said. We really appreciated the input from the staff and took it really seriously. And we do mean to enhance the communication. So
Okay.
we're looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Corral. Any other public comment about agenda items only? If it's not about an agenda item, you need to wait till the next public comment forum at the end. Ms. Jackalou.
Can I ask a question about comprehensive maintenance plan? That's M. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's on the
M7,
agenda.
it's on page 12.
Sure, Paula, what's your question?
I just wanted to know, because I don't know anything about this, is what's going to be addressed in terms of, and I'm hoping, the plumbing
Thank
at
you.
Princeton High School? Sorry.
Yeah.
Plumbing at Princeton High School, in terms of the outdoor spigots and water?
There's no, what, there's plans for, the plans for 16, what year are we? 17,
I'm sorry,
18.
I can't hear you, what?
Okay, for 17, 18, the actual details of what maintenance will be done hasn't been developed yet.
So this is like
So
plan?
This is an estimate of what will be done. So we haven't developed the budget for 17, 18. So if you have some specific issues, you need to talk to them, to the principal, so that the principal communicates them to maintenance so that we can include it.
Okay,
Okay.
because we're in a drought, and it's been like really horrible to try and take care of the gardens and
Do you
the
not
plants.
have outdoor faucets? Is that
The
what you're-
outdoor spigots aren't functioning anymore.
Okay.
There's actually, I would call it 1.5 on the entire building.
Okay, then what you need to do is communicate that to the principal.
Yeah.
And ask the principal to communicate that on his list. Each principal and administrator is asked to submit a list to the facilities department of their maintenance type needs so that they can be included in a budget. Because
Okay,
if nobody tells us, we don't know.
Okay, I understand. I've been in communication with people in maintenance. I thought he needed to send those requests directly to there.
So you did submit a maintenance request.
Not a maintenance request, it's an email. This is the communication thing. You know, you have a couple of minutes, it's 8:30 at night, you know, you're sending an email out.
Well, there could, something like that isn't going to be, it may not just be, I'm going to run over and change a filter.
Oh, no, it's nothing like that.
But that's what I'm saying. So if it's a project, then it
Yeah.
hasn't been budgeted, then it can't be addressed. So that's why now's the time to communicate it to your principal so it can be included, especially if it's going to be costly. It has to be evaluated.
Okay.
The estimates put into the budget.
Will
along
do.
With other priorities.
Will do.
So,
I guess I should identify myself for the record, because I didn't do that. I'm sorry. Paula Jackalou, Princeton High School, and parent of 2 students that successfully made it through here. And so the next question I have is on the interesting presentation of our student reps. Very timely. I'm doing scientific processes, the method, the whole way of looking at science with my Bio 1 students. And I did assign a homework assignment related to the presidential debates, except I asked them to look at it through the lens of pseudoscience, to look for examples of pseudoscience that we had covered in class. And so that's just to show how one event can take on many different meanings. But the intent was also knowing that students would probably be asked the same assignment for a history or social studies class. I figured great way to get homework done for 2 different subjects with one integrated assignment. So I'm keenly interested in this survey that you did, especially in looking at how the questions were formulated, again, echoing this gentleman here, demographics, I'd be interested in who the kids are. Are they students that are taking APs? Are they students that perhaps are in the plus classes? I'm interested in knowing if the sample is representative of the whole population. And I don't expect you to necessarily, have to respond to all of these questions, but I'd really like to talk with you about it and to see the survey. And also to have my biology students look at it in terms of how to gather data, because they do their own science projects. Now, something I'd like you all to be careful of is I'm a little leery of this, in the sense that I'm hoping that this isn't going to come to a point where we set policy on exactly how many minutes of homework a teacher can give per night. Again, I had 2 of my children come through here, and there were actually nights that they didn't go to sleep. They pulled all-nighters to manage what courses they took at the high school. It was an extremely rigorous preparation that I think has paved the way for success. Both of my children saw kids fail out around them and had the miserable task of helping friends pack up their belongings, with parents teary-eyed, moving them out of their dorms after the first semester because they couldn't cut it. My kids did, and both of them said it was because of the rigorous experience that they had at the high school. My concern is that in this quest for wellness, that we're wanting to go one way with the load for students when colleges and universities are going the complete opposite way in terms of what they're expecting students to be able to last through. I did ask this question recently at another meeting not involving the board. Have there been any studies done to show how resilient PHS students are once they get to college? How successful are they? How do they make it through all 4 years? Or do they leave? And not because of medical reasons, because of something terrible that happened in their family, or even more heartbreaking, they ran out of money in their junior or senior year, of which my kids saw that happen with other kids around them. So before we take this leap into a homework policy, I'm hoping that we can know exactly what is Princeton High School doing. Yes, people are stressed out. I can assure you the teachers are especially stressed out, and no one is doing a survey to ask us about how worthy we think some of the assignments we are, if we consider them to be busy work or not. I'd like to end with, I happen to be grading a lab tonight of a student who shall remain unknown. And it's interesting, a person saw this lab who also shall remain nameless, an adult. And this is a basic lab, how to make slides and use a microscope. It's performance-oriented. The adult that saw this called this lab cookie cutter, thought that it had nothing to do with the new science standards, and I found that absolutely heartbreaking, because in putting together this lab with a coworker who has since retired, we put our heart and soul into the creation of this lab. And to have somebody call it cookie cutter from the outside, who never, I'm sure, worked their way through this lab completely, was, like I said, it was heartbreaking. Now, one of the tasks that I ask kids to do is I ask them to read and highlight the lab. Some students might review that or think of that as being busy work. However, what I'm able to do is, with this particular student, I'm able to actually, and I'm going to cover the name, I'm able to actually show exactly where the information was stated and where their incorrect answer is, because this student clearly did not read the lab closely. They just did it to get it done with because they viewed it as busy work. So what I'm trying to say is, sometimes kids in September and October, when you're asking them questions, they may not know why the teacher is giving them the assignment. I just attended a Flex PD today where we were told that kids need to see things sometimes 20 times before the information sticks and stays in the memory. So maybe sometimes when they're writing those definitions or they're doing those worksheets, they're actually exposing themselves to information that they need to. So I wrote messages to the student like, looks like you're highlighting bold-faced words. In other words, they're not reading for knowing, they're reading to just get it done. So I offer these comments to you as a teacher as I go through and I grade labs at this, meeting and listen as intently as I can, to just be careful. Because if this is a survey that we want to give to all kids, I think that, you could have a good idea and want to find out the answer to a very important question, but you got to do it the right way. Because if you don't, the stakes are very high for students in terms of what we do as a district and what we expect students to be able to achieve. So I thank you for staying here this late.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you did. And I really do want to talk to you. I'm in room 287, and I'd really appreciate it if you could stop by and show me the survey. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackalou. Any other members of the public with comments about agenda items only? Seeing none, we'll move on. May I have a motion for, we have first readings, which don't need a motion. I need a motion for item J2, policy 2431.4, 5330.01 only. Got that? Daphne first, Tom second. All in favor? I believe it's unanimous. May I have a motion for item K1 without B7? Oh, wait, hold on.
Are we also removing the,
Okay, so hold on a second. I'm looking for a motion for the personnel agenda without items B7 and J3, 4, and 5, I guess.
This. I know, but I don't want
What about?
3, 4, and 5. Why 6?
6 is right.
Okay. Can I also ask a question? Stephanie, in closed session, we discussed there were changes to the agenda. Is this the most current personnel? Okay, so all changes are encompassed in this, okay.
Because you mentioned there was a duplication, was that?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. So I would also like to take out I.
The whole I? Why? This is according to contract.
I have questions on I as well,
Okay.
from 17 to 23. They're just questions, but
The entire list.
Do you mean to I 1 through 58, all of it?
I know.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
All of I?
Do you use specific items you're concerned about?
All
I
right.
mean, I have specific items I'm concerned about, but I'd prefer to leave it.
I understand.
Thank you.
I understand now. Okay, so you know what I'm gonna do? Yep, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna ask for a motion for the personnel agenda minus B7, all of I, and J3, 4, and 5. And then I'm gonna ask for a second motion for the personnel agenda items I, 1 through 58 only, okay?
Okay.
So the first motion I'm looking for is the whole personnel agenda minus B7 and minus J3, 4, and 5, and minus the entire item I. Justin. Second, Pat. Thank you. All in favor?
No, roll call.
Oh, roll call. Sorry.
What was the second motion that you were gonna ask for, though?
Just item
Just
I
I.
on the personnel agenda. And then, so when that's on the floor,
Right now, we're omitting B7, J3, 4, and 5, and all of.
No, I said.
yes,
yeah,
yes,
and
all of I.
And all of I, okay.
I'm gonna come back to I. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, Andrew Spalla,
Yes.
Patrick Sullivan,
Yes.
Betsy Calvert Baglio,
Yes.
Molly Crine,
Yes.
Justin Doran,
Yes.
Tom Hagendorn,
Yes.
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Vern Spruill's absent, Connie Witter,
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion for personnel agenda items I, 1 through 58?
K1.
K1,
K, 1,
I, 1 through 58.
Okay.
Sorry, Stephanie.
yeah. K1.
Molly,
I,
second,
1 through
Pat,
58.
thank you. Now, if you have questions about anything on personnel agenda item I, 1 through 58, this would be your time to ask.
I just have a question. You said K. I? It's I? We're talking?
No, it's K.
It's item
I.
K on
K is
the board
all of
agenda.
personnel.
Ah, sorry.
It's
My
K, but
apologies.
It's I, yeah. It's personnel I section.
Questions about personnel agenda items I, 1 through 58?
Molly, I just have a question, and it's only just because I'm not sure if you know. There's item 17 and item 22. They're additional stipends that we haven't used in the past. So I'm just curious as to item 17, will that be, are we adding that coordinating position, or maybe we're going to do costumes with all 4 of the drama departments? We do have a significant stipend for producing both fall and spring, and those are listed. So I would just want a little clarification on what that brand new position is, whether it's for 1 year, whether it's going to be a sustained position. I would just be curious about that. We've never had it before.
It's probably existed in the contract because we can't add anything to the contract, so it's probably a position that's been there.
And we just haven't staffed it.
And we have not used it, but we wouldn't be creating a new position on this list.
Okay.
We may be using it for the first
We
time.
haven't had it on the board agenda in my 7
Okay.
years or 9 years, so I've not seen it in
I believe
Princeton.
you.
Maybe you
Yeah.
can explain what this is, do you know? I mean, my understanding of item I on the personnel agenda is that these are non-athletic stipend amounts set by our contract with the PREA.
Well, I have no problem with
Right.
the,
Yeah.
I have no problem
And
with
that
the
list-
amount. I'm just,
And it's
my question
designation of
is,
the person.
yeah, or the person. I totally give that to our administration and have good faith there. But my question is that I call it the creep. So we're sort of creeping into an additional choreography position in item 23 in a drama, or in item 20 for a drama class. So it's meant to be a drama class, so I'm just questioning why we need a full-time choreography person for a drama class. for the musical theater, I understand getting in a choreographer from New York for X amount of dollars. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for, for a dance thing. But when I'm looking at drama, I'm just having a little disconnect in paying that stipend. So to answer, to our budget, just in adding up those two stipends alone, I just have to question a little bit of explanation. And if personnel's not aware and Lou's not here to answer
Right.
that question.
Or Pat. Was
Or
there was
Pat.
there a third position that you also were questioning? 'Cause
No, just that I know that we have the choreographer for one class, then it looks like we're adding, and that has always been. So then we're adding a choreographer for a second class. Those classes meet every day. So if the choreographer's here from New York, but I know those productions are at different times. So this could be my ignorance. So I totally respect the department for doing the right thing. But when we're adding a new position, I just don't like to blindly accept a brand-new stipend in a brand-new position without some explanation. Is this going to save us money in some way by having a costume coordinator? Are we now not going to rent costumes? Because we actually pay to rent costumes. They come in on a hanger and we put them on. So are we going to do something else? Is there a better strategy? I'm sorry to put that on you, Steve. Lou's not here. Pat Linehan's not here, and
Right.
I'm sure he has a very good
I'm
explanation
sure
for all
I could
this.
probably text him right now.
Yeah, but as a board member, I just don't feel comfortable understanding, or without a better understanding of those two stipends.
Well, I think that this is something that we could table. I mean, if you look at the dates, this is the
Okay.
stipend list for the entire year, so it's not
Yeah,
time sensitive in that sense.
yeah, and I don't mean to hold that up. I'm
No,
just
it's
not.
totally a good point,
Okay.
Evelyn. I mean, I'm pretty confident that these positions are on the schedule, and they just haven't been filled in the past, and that's why they
Okay.
haven't
I,
been turned up, but Molly, go ahead.
I don't know from my personnel hat, but I know that the drama classes here is adding dance to their performance. So
Well, then that would make
will-
sense.
So, but the board can't just
I don't
unilaterally,
know,
I don't
no.
think, just add new stipended
No, we
positions
can't.
anyway.
Right.
I mean, that's a contractual matter. So, but, if it's gonna make everybody feel more comfortable, I think there's no good reason not to table it to November so you can get the answers to the questions you want. That's
Maybe
fine.
start.
What?
The choreography probably has started.
But,
I'm
a lot of
okay.
these have
Okay.
already started
Right.
because they date back to 9/1, so.
I'm okay with the choreography. I guess given my understanding of the program, I just really would challenge number 17. I would really like a good explanation for that.
I think that's
Is
your
that fair?
job. That's your
Okay.
job, is to get explanations for things, so
All
that's
right.
fine. So can I have, just to make this formal, can I have a motion to table board agenda item K1, personnel agendas items I1 through 58 till the following board meeting? Justin?
All of
Second? Second?
All of them?
Connie, thank you.
Is it-
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
think so. I mean, I think
Do you
other
anticipate
people
a
have other
problem
questions that
if
they
we
can't
do
ask in
that by November
public, so I
15th?
think we'll table it.
Okay, so you
Okay.
table all, okay. So, so we're gonna, so you wanna remove Molly and Pat's moving of K1?
What? No. No, no, no.
tabling it.
We
Yeah,
didn't,
but now
we
but
moved,
you just voted it again
no.
to table. Okay,
All right.
okay, so now now, I'm sorry, who moved to table?
Justin and Connie. I'm very impatient tonight.
K1I through 58, okay. Okay.
Do you want to do roll call for that tabling? Okay.
Do we need to? Yeah, it's personnel. Okay, Andrew Spalla,
Yes.
Patrick Sullivan,
Yes.
Betsy Calver Baglio.
Yes.
Molly Crine,
Yes.
Justin Doran,
Yes.
Tom Hagadorn,
Yes.
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Connie Witter,
Yes.
and Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
May I have a motion for agenda items L1 through, oh my goodness, 15? Justin, second? Anyone? Tom, thank you.
Wait a minute, hold on a second.
What? Oh my God.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're doing.
No, we're good.
Wait a minute, where's,
So Kiva came out.
Moving to curriculum.
Yes, because.
I'm just gonna catch up.
Okay, we tabled, now we're on L, right? 1 through-
Okay.
All right,
We're
up
good.
to-
Yeah,
no,
curriculum
we're good.
instruction,
Sorry.
yeah.
Hold on a second, I gotta get to L.
Page 5.
This is K.
Oh, I
My,
see.
my pages are different.
Oh.
Okay, so L, I'm sorry, so
L1 through 15.
1 through 15.
Justin moved and Tom
Tom
seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion? Pat says no. All in favor? You're good? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Unanimous? May I have a motion for agenda items M1 through,
No, you have to do 1
why?
and 2.
Oh, the audit,
separately.
oh, the special audit. We get to make a big fuss about you, Stephanie.
No, you don't need to make a big fuss, we just have to have a separate public session.
All right. Do I move M1 and 2 in before we have public forum?
Yes,
Okay.
and then that, open it for discussion, and it becomes a public forum.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion for agenda items M1 and 2, the annual school district audit? Molly? Justin, second. Thank you. Any comment?
I just have to ask a question. I know you spent a lot of time talking about this at finance. Was there any comments that come from the auditors about the report? I assume that's what we're talking about right here.
Yes.
That's what you,
It was a very clean report. There were only 2 comments of, of any substance at all. One was with respect to a statistical sample around the way that we count students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So that they recommended that we count the sampling differently, number 1. And then number 2, a recommendation that we improve cash disbursements,
Cash deposits.
deposits of cash collected for school trips. And there's a rule that you deposit it within 30 days of collection.
48 hours.
40 hours of collection. But teachers will,
30 days.
will,
Say 30 days.
teachers will hold it for 30 days or even
whenever.
longer as they, as checks are coming in. So it's just as a practical matter, hard to do, but so they flagged that. Other than that, there were no comments or questions, so it was a very clean audit.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Any members of the public with any comments or questions about the district's annual audit? David? Sit down, you stay seated. Okay, hearing none. All in favor of agenda items 1 and 2? It is unanimous. Thank you. We good? May I have a motion for agenda items M3 through 15? Tom, second. Connie, thank you. Any discussion?
I just have one question.
Yeah.
So where would the purchase, what committee would discuss the purchase of buses?
If it came up.
Could be facilities, could be finance.
Or we don't need to do it in committee. We could just do it here.
Right. So just,
your
yeah, I just-
question?
Yeah, but
my
at
question, well, they're big sums of money.
Yeah.
Well, finance, it was
Yeah.
on the finance agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was because when we have finance, we have the financial section of the agenda on the finance.
But if what you're
agenda.
suggesting, Daphne, is that we look at that, let's look at it at finance and see what we're spending on transportation over a year and whether it makes sense to bring it in-house, right? Wouldn't that be a good place to start
I think
anyway?
she's looking at
Well,
the
it-
buses.
but
These are
it-
Yeah.
purchases
Yeah.
of buses,
12,
So-
not
yeah.
transportation contracts.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So that is part of the finance agenda each month, the business section. It's one of our line items on the agenda. The other thing, just so you know, which wouldn't be shown in here, is that the transportation supervisor has adjusted transportation routes that we've actually saved a lot of money on routes through regular home to school, school to home to school, and also athletic trips.
No, that's great. I just, you know, for transparency, I'm just wondering
It is
when
on, it is
when-
on finance.
It
but
is.
We just didn't
And
talk
there are
about it
certain,
last
there are
night
certain
because it was-
guidelines that we have to follow in terms of the age of buses before we phase them out. And I don't have the dates of the buses that were,
I think it's 12 years.
yeah,
Yeah, these are replacement buses.
so they're replacements, yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, but they're on, it is on.
Finance,
you do find
yeah.
them on
You learn something new every month. So, anyone else? All in favor? Thank you. Old business, new business. Any board member? Oh, no, sorry, not yet. I lied. May I have a motion for agenda item N1, Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement? This is an annual agreement we are required to approve by law, so you may ask, why do we approve it? I don't know.
Justin?
Justin first, second, anybody? Anybody? Thank you,
Pat.
Pat. Discussion?
There are no changes.
No changes from last year.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Okay.
Okay, now, old business, new business. Any board member with anything that wasn't on the agenda? Yes, Tom?
It's related to the great work of Abby and Brian, and I didn't mean that Justin and I should be giving them 8 hours more of homework a night. I think they're hitting up on some really important issues here, and they're really raising some important information that we should discuss. But just to reiterate what we were saying before, just getting really good data. I share the concern before that I mentioned, but also that was shared with us about just making sure we're really understanding it, because I think these are some very important issues, both on the homework issue and also the mental health, psychology issue. I just wonder if we should have a conversation about at what point would we want to be taking charge of doing it, since we have more resources as a district, whether at the high school or at the middle school, because I think they've started us off in the right direction, but they do have other things that they need to be doing. And I think it's extraordinarily important that we be looking at the data in a systematic way.
Absolutely. We actually have talked about gaining that data through our strategic plan. Homework is one of the objectives under the wellness portion of the strategic plan. So we can look at using your survey as a starting point and seeing if we can build the data from there.
But I think as part of the strategic plan, the thing that everyone worries about is that we do things that are actionable now rather than, and Brian and Abby had some great suggestions and ideas, but there are some current concerns, right? One is that we have a meaningful statistical sample, which if these guys don't have the resources to more or less compel people to fill out the survey, but the high school does, and we could do it in a more official way to collect better data about homework. They also had some great suggestions just, from the students themselves about having some student feedback, about counting hours and, the meaningfulness of homework and just being able to collect that data, which we could do, more broadly as an institution rather than rely on Brian and Abby and other students to do that. There may be other things that I think Dr. Corral has mentioned in the past, just disclosing homework expectations with respect to a course when you sign up for it. So you say, hey, this is 3 credits and it's 2 hours of homework a night, or it's 3 credits and it's 45 minutes of homework a night. And so a student and a parent could then say, here's a course load for you that adds up to 3 hours. And then the administration could say, hey, there's 10 students here who are taking 5 hours worth of homework. That's too much, right? And so if we start measuring homework, then we can start doing things about it. Otherwise, it's just people whistling into the wind, right?
Right.
So
Although we have to be very careful to the point you made earlier that an assignment could be 20 minutes for one student and an hour for another. So as we're making those estimates per course, we just have to.
Collecting that data would be important too, where someone, if you're getting feedback the other way and every student is writing down, hey, this took me 20 minutes, this took me 2 hours, and then the teacher can compile that and get some feedback about whether their expectation is right or wrong. It generally, and then specifically, as we're talking about differentiating.
So one of the things that I sent to the board and to the administrative team were some student surveys that actually I think would yield a lot of feedback that would be helpful to teachers, and it would go straight to teachers for their use. So that's the kind of thing that we could incorporate in terms of a question about homework and time.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about I had some comments on those we can talk offline about. But generally speaking, homework, I think Tom's point is that homework, maybe homework is something that we should focus on in a actionable way, in a meaningfully, recent period, recent tight period of time, not waiting, but having it something that the board is focusing on. Is that something that, as a new business item, is that what you're suggesting, Tom?
Yes, I mean, I think sooner rather than later, but I was mostly just thinking about the district doing something more official, because it has better resources. And
Yeah.
the homework is an important piece. The other part as well, the mental health and psychology.
Right.
I do want to add one thing about the homework, though, because it came up. I do think we do have to trust our teachers to be assigning good homework. I think that has to be an important point. I will say something from my own professional life, because I teach at the college, is we do these surveys of students every year, and we found for one of our very important courses, we taught the students, even though we thought it was an essential course we were teaching, the students, when they're graduating, thought it was a completely inessential course, and we're wondering why in the world we were teaching it, which really shook us to the bone. We wanted to be teaching them, and hopefully they were appreciating it. And it forced us to think a little bit more about what we were doing, and we made some changes. It's now a more effective course. I don't think it meant we gave less work or anything, but I think it's a two-way street. I don't think there are any simple solutions. One has to be thoughtful about what can be doing it, but I think if there are students thinking it's busy work, there's probably they're not really understanding why they're doing it. And I think it might be the assignment is perfectly fine, as we were just told, but it may not be apparent why they're doing it. And there might be some conversations along that as well.
Well, absolutely. I would think that, no offense to the students here, but, the student's word isn't the be-all and end-all. The teacher, as Ms. Jacklou said, might have some very good reasons for assigning something, and it might not be apparent to a 15-year-old or 16-year-old why that is. But still, just getting that feedback and saying, hey, we hear it, and we think it's incorrect, is something better than just saying we don't know which one students think is busy work and which one, you know what I mean? It would be nice just to have the information, and then you can weigh it as appropriate. But starting to focus on this issue is something I think that the students over and over again, not just Brian and Abby, but their predecessors and the predecessors before them have been talking about. And I think it's time to really start focusing and at least start figuring out how to measure the things we need to measure to have a reasoned discussion about it.
And I know that our supervisors have been having conversations about this beginning last year and with departments this year, and now they're looking at the homework through the lens of differentiation. But having some helpful feedback from students is good.
But yet, Steve, with all those conversations over a period of years, 4 hours a night. So, something's got to change
Can I interject
in
real
someone's
quick?
lifetime.
Okay, sorry. So, Ms. Jacklou, I just want to address the purpose of us looking at this is not to put a cap on the amount of homework that teachers can give out to students. I believe a lot of the teachers in our district are very reasonable. A lot of them have children, and they understand how much we can manage as students. The purpose that we're trying to look at here is to make sure that when students are doing homework, that homework is something that is productive to their education and something that they feel benefits them in terms of whether that be expanding their knowledge base or cementing the concepts that they've learned, and just having that kind of a communication between teachers and students for teachers to understand what students feel is meaningful and potentially understand if there are discrepancies between how something is interpreted, then it'll help make sure that students are getting the full effect that is intended with the homework that they get. And right now I'm taking a course at Princeton University, so I find that, especially with my course right now, we get about 4 to 6 problems of homework per week, but these are all problems that are drastically different from each other, that cover very different concepts. And though it does take a relatively large amount of time to do them, each one is something that helps us learn something new instead of going over the same tasks. And it doesn't feel like we're just spitting out answers for the sake of doing that. It feels like we're actually getting something out of it. And I think that's the purpose that we're trying to chase here, to make sure that whatever homework is assigned is meaningful to the students.
Thank you, Brian. That was very well said and very subtle explanation of your survey questions and the responses. Any other old business, new business?
One other new business item that we talked about in student achievement, and I mentioned at the student achievement report, but I think at some point, I know we've got lots of things going on, but at some point, it would be good to bring in the social emotional learning coaches to talk about differentiation and the issues that they talked about at student achievement.
Yeah, no, we talked at the last Student Achievement Committee meeting about having more presentations to the board that would facilitate discussion about important issues and initiatives in the district. I believe that for the November 15th meeting, we're inviting Deneen Gruchez in to talk about the DLI program and to have discussion about next steps with that.
Okay.
But we can certainly add the.
Yeah, we can't do everything at once, but
No.
but just I'd like to remember that we want to talk. We wanted to have them in because they had two great presentations that they gave us that were really eye-opening for us, and so we think that the community should see them.
So,
Yeah.
Pat, so the Special Ed PTO will be hosting, I think, Sarah, Kristen, and Meredith on the executive functioning presentation that was presented in March. The one that presented us in the spring will be presented to the community in March of 2017. So hopefully we can make that available to the whole community, not just the special education community.
That would be a good one to
Yeah.
film if we could, and then just be able to put it up on our website.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Any other old business, new business? Okay. Any public comment on any topic at all?
Yes.
Hi, David.
To address Andrea, so I just wanted to thank Andrea and any other board members who are ending their term. It is a labor of love, not compensated, thankless at times. Having to sit here to listen to parents complain, bring their grievances. So thank you on behalf of the community.
Thank you, David. It's very sweet.
2 points. I was going to make one, but I heard about the concussion policy. Well, David Goldsmith. I live in town. I have 3 sons. Gone through the high school. One's a senior, and going to college next year for sure. My wife's also one of the nurses at the high school. So I text my wife while I was waiting. I said, "Oh, did you hear about the new concussion policy?" And she said, "No, we haven't." And she says, "Oh, I bet Shannon Coe, the athletic trainer, hasn't heard either." And she said, "Oh, is Brian there? Desminski?" No. So consistent with Dr. Carell's point and his saying basically thanks to the board for the partnership around the policy on electronic communications, I would just say, speaking for the healthcare professionals and athletic staff and trainers, that if you guys are going to do a policy about concussions, the first place they're going to ask is the nursing staff, Shannon. I mean, I think you'd want to talk to them.
Good point.
And the medical marijuana one, they had no clue about either before you did that one.
Yeah, that's just state law, but we'll
At least let them know,
Yes,
because
you're
they're going
right.
to get the questions.
You're right.
The main reason I came tonight is 100 yards from us is a field. It's Valley Road Field. 10 years ago, it was the nicest grass field in the county. 5 years ago-ish, I stood here. It was actually a meeting at JW, and it was right as part of the spending of the money to create a moonscape out there. And I said, "Why are we doing this?" And I looked actually to see if I could see myself on TV from however many years ago, and I couldn't, because I wanted to say, look, I came up 5 years ago and said, "Why the heck are we doing this? It's a beautiful field." And somebody, I know it was a woman, I'm sorry, I just remember some woman on the board, probably none of you, said, "Oh, it's horrible, we need the drainage." It's so bad out there, no teams can use it. It's now a cow pasture. We spent, taxpayers, $400,000. I told Andrea I was going to bring this up. Who is being held accountable? What happened? How does that happen? So I know Gary's not here, Weissman, but I don't know, I assume it's facilities. How does that happen? It's like my yearly property taxes and everyone in this room times 5 up in smoke. So there's probably more to it, but we had a great field that didn't need improvement, but somebody thought it did, and now it is horrible, Horrible, horrible. So bad that when the varsity had to play a game, we had to, because we couldn't play on they couldn't play on the turf because another team needed it, which is fine. So we played at one of the township fields, which was okay, but this was a great field, and it's not. So none of you may know anything about this, but Steve looks out at it every day and probably knows that it's a cow pasture. It's literally worse than my lawn on my front yard, which is not great. So anyway.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
David, I will say, you can stay for 1 second. I don't know that the reason for the field being in the condition it is, I know that they brought a lot of clay to the surface and it's not as permeable, and so anytime it rains, we have water on that field. I do know that as part of, we talked about bringing in architects to take a look at our facility needs for this year, and that will be one thing that we look at, and hopefully we'll get some insight into what went wrong and how it can be improved.
I mean, I know people have sort of tried to investigate, and my understanding of what happened is sort of brought the clay to the surface, put this great new drainage system underneath, but with the clay at the surface, nothing gets through it to the great drainage. So it's a pretty simple concept that all of us could understand. Therefore, the professionals that I'm sure Stephanie and her, we can't hire anyone without an RFP and all the formality, thank goodness. I'm sure we went through an approved supplier and got the right bids, and somebody who knew what they were doing did the work.
Well, and I think
anyone who gardens in this area knows there's clay in the soil.
Right, and I think we even brought that contractor or subcontractor back and made them fix it again, like a couple of times.
Yeah, how'd that go for us?
Well, better than it had been before when they first finished. So no, I agree with you. It's not perfect. Okay, I've got a kid on JV soccer. He suffered the whole season. I get it, but it's yeah.
It's got that nice new sportswear. It looks good on him, doesn't it?
All right, sit down, David.
Steve, do you want to respond or something about the concussion policy? Because I would like to give just a piece of information about it.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, Tom.
I just want to say it's not a new concussion policy. So the policy we've had has been since 2011. And the only reason we were revising at this point was we realized that one clause of it that has been in effect for the last 4 years, we weren't actually following it to the extent we did when we passed it 4 years ago. So the modification is, if we had a whole new policy, that would certainly be one thing, but we're really just reducing, at least the intention at first was to reduce one paragraph. There has been another issue that's come up about another clause in it, but the policy itself, I believe, was introduced way back in 2011, and I wasn't on the board then, but I hope there would have been such a discussion, so.
Don't know, yeah.
Thank you.
But valid point, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah, our staff should be told what the policies are.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of policies.
There are a lot. Anyone else?
Paul Jack Lou, Princeton High School again. Just a couple of follow-up things on the discussion that was there. One thing that we have to be very careful of with the homework issue and the whole whatever study it is that we put together is that we have to be very careful of confirmation bias. I actually did a survey on how long it took for students to do my homework assignments, and I did that last year. And on average, for most of my assignments, the students were spending between 20 and 30 minutes on my homework, which I didn't think was extreme in any way. When I would assign notes, note-taking, which I think is very important, know how to take notes. I use that as a life skill to this day. Some of the students were able to take notes in 45 minutes. Others, it took them over 2-3 hours. Just as I believe it was you, Mr. Sullivan, that you brought up that you're going to get some kids that no matter what, it's going to take them a lot longer to do their homework. So I would ask you to be very careful about confirmation bias. What I did was I asked the kids, I'm just interested in knowing when you start your homework. So if you could just write down, when you start it and when you stop it. I'm interested in what students are starting their homework at 7:30 at night versus 10:30 at night. I wasn't actually coming right out and saying, I want to know how long it takes you to do your homework, because then you get different answers, possibly, instead of fact. The other thing to ask is, are they doing their homework, or are they on Snapchat, or are they on, whatever? Are they actually doing their homework? And how do you build that reliability into something and to show students? Very often students don't even realize that they're distracted. They'll just start zoning out for whatever reason. And we all do that. I caught myself doing that today. Sleep deprivation is amazing, when things like that happen. So I just thought that I would like to point that out, that, how you craft a survey and how you know that the answers that you're getting are actually reliable is so important. I think we need parent involvement with this. Maybe it's the parents who we ought to be asking, can you keep an eye on your kid and just, note the time that they actually start and stop, and get an honest judgment from two different viewpoints, the student as well as the parent, might be a way to build in reliability. So I just thought I would bring that up. Then I just have two other things that I'd like to talk about. One is related to wellness. Whenever I go into JW, the smell of chlorine is so bad. I mean, it burns my eyes, and I'm just very concerned about what's the chlorine doing to all those actively dividing cells and those young bodies that are running through that building. Is anybody looking at the rate of respiratory ailments at JW as compared to other schools? I think having the pool is great, but I have information about chlorine's a nasty little bird. It's not something you want to be near. And so I just wanted to gently raise that subject and discuss it privately with you about if you would be interested about my concerns that I have. The next thing is about the learning management system. And I've been told that other people have raised these concerns. I haven't been present at all of the meetings, so I beg your forgiveness of ignorance. Apparently, this HiQ system is owned by Pearson. Is that true? Pearson? They're the ones that own Power School? It's owned by Power School now. Okay, so that's Pearson. Yes? No? Who is it? Pearson. Who is it?
Pearson sold it to a private equity company.
Oh, this scares me. See, as a teacher, I haven't seen this completely unfold yet. I want to know what they're doing with all this data on our kids. I mean, they say, oh, well, we won't attach any names to it. I'm sorry, there's too much hacking going on. This is a gold mine of information. All of these kids, all of the comments that will be going across there, the information we'll be sharing about our curriculum, what we teach. I'm just very nervous about privacy issues, and I just don't trust that a corporation is going to be looking out for our kids. And this seems to be the direction that we're going. But I just want to be I don't know what to say, the canary in the coal mine, or I don't know what to say, what metaphor I can attach to it. But I'm very concerned about big haiku brother, for loss of better words. I don't know what to do about this issue. But
Thank you.
Just thought I'd say it. Thank you.
Hi, Bob Correll from the high school again. I actually forgot before when I got up because it was appropriate then, but I guess it's appropriate now. I just also want to give a shout out to Ms. Rotz as she retires. You had to see the high school last spring when we were in a little bit of a crisis, and the entire upper supervisory management system really took over, led by Lori, Jessica, and Jared. They did an amazing job holding the high school together in Mr. Snyder's absence. So I just want to say that she's always been a steady presence at the high school and is a big loss for the high school community, in my opinion. As for the homework study, I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes, and it's attributed to Mark Twain, though he says he didn't say it. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Social science is one of the hardest pieces of research to do because humans are very hard to control for one single variable. So I want to back what Ms. Jackalou was saying about being very careful and very diligent in how you design recording the data, that if we ask the kids to look back and say, oh, yeah, I was doing about this much, and their friend says, oh, I was doing this much, they may change their reporting. But if we get them to log what they're doing, and I personally would like to see them log it by class. And Ty is the kid who's doing 5 or 6 hours of homework, taking 6 AP classes, right? And is that the problem? Which I've been saying is that they're taking too many AP classes. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing I want to talk about is what they talk about busy work. One of the things I learned last year when I got to grade or be an AP reader for the first time, 2 of the questions that I was assigned to score had the phrasing, answer this question in terms of X. A full 30% of the answers that I read said nothing about X in the entire question. So it is exactly what Mrs. Jackalou was saying. The kids don't read. They have mastered a technique called search and destroy. Okay, you give them a list of questions and they go, oh, there's an answer, there's an answer, there's an answer. They don't actually close read. And that's one of the things I'm actually working on this year is getting the kids to actually closely read just the test questions so they don't miss important information in the test questions. That's something I learned in going to that. The final thing I want to talk about is something that came out of a discussion I had with Mr. Cochran and Mr. Snyder at homecoming. First of all, I just want to, for the 3rd year in a row, tell you how wonderful a time homecoming is and encourage you all to go every year because it is a community event and it's a wonderful community event. And I had a good time just discussing various things like, talking about adjusting the school schedule and the problem. Mr. Snyder brought up a problem that he had learned from other principals about lights on the fields. I understand what problems lights on the field here are. But we've sat here for over a year now talking about school schedules and sleep and wellness. So I am going to propose an experiment. Next year, September 15th happens to be a Friday. Here is my proposed experiment at the high school, that from the first day of school till September 15th, we roll everything back a half an hour. We start school at 8:20 and end at 3:20. And we tell the CVC, we don't care what your rules are. For those week and a half, we're only going to play games that start at 4:30. What's the CVC going to do? They're going to make us forfeit the game? Could you imagine the publicity? We're trying to improve the wellness of our kids, and they're telling us we have to forfeit the game. And the reason I picked that time frame is I could probably pick it till the end of the September, but clearly in the first 2 weeks in September, you have enough light on the fields to play the game by 6:30.
Sure. Yep.
Okay? And it would be an experiment, and I would like to get the kids to record for the first 2 weeks of school and the second 2 weeks of school, how many hours of sleep they get each night. I'm willing to bet it won't change. I bet they'll just stay up a half an hour later because they're sitting there with their phones all night long. But right now, we're just speculating without data, and as a scientist, I like data. So that's my proposal.
Thank you, Bob. And you'll be interested to know that 40% of mistakes in reading and in science and math tests are reading mistakes. So it's good that you're teaching the close reading to your students. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
And now for something completely different. Rod Montgomery, taxpayer. I want to thank particularly Mr. Brian Lee for taking time after the last board meeting to explain to me how the participants in the tutoring program at the Ideas Center conduct continuous improvement. That was very helpful. I would also like to thank the absent Assistant Superintendent Goldstein for his always enlightening This Week in Education program. I have finally caught up, and I have many things that I need to respond to, but not tonight. There is an impending event that cries out for a particular focus of my comments tonight. I refer, of course, to the impending presentation by the Princeton High School Orchestra of An Evening with Le Petit Prince. I don't know if I got anybody, but yeah, it's late. The author of Le Petit Prince, in English, The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, had previously to writing that, wrote Wind, Sand, and Stars. The pearl of wisdom I hope to share with you this evening comes from Wind, Sand, and Stars, and I request permission to distribute a handout. Very small.
Thank you. And good call on Pearson.
I have some others if anyone wants them. Thank you. So I just let them circulate. Okay. So for benefit of the online audience and later viewers of the recording, I'll just read this pearl. Perfection is finally attained, not when there is no longer anything to add, but when there is no longer anything to take away. Please consider this as you consider the program of studies and the strategic plan and the budget for the next year. There being nothing else I can take away from my comments this evening, I will simply thank you all for your attention and thank you for your work on behalf of Princeton students.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn? Daphna, second. Tom, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.